service that Mr. Morin has given us over the years. But we do have a new commissioner with us today. Sarah Woods is here. Sarah, we're glad to have you on board and appreciate you agreeing to serve with Traffic and Parking Commission. And don't worry about it, because, you know, you got Brenda down there and the councilman here to take care of you and walk you through it. Okay, but we're glad to have you. But let me give the announcements, folks. If you are not satisfied with the decision made by Traffic and Parking Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of entry of the Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Approval of the minutes from the May meeting. Do I have a motion? Approve. Have a first, a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Approval on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a first.
I'd like to, my microphone's not working, I apologize. I'd like to remove the first bulleted item under the mandatory referral. To always stop at 14 Shelby.
Okay.
Councilman Holmes is here to speak on that.
Okay, that's under resolution number 4 would be the first bullet. Is that right, Chip? All right, so we're pulling it totally, right?
No, we're going to, someone's here to speak on it.
Speak on it? Okay.
And I just have a question on the loading zone at 410 4th Avenue South. So only a question, so however you want to handle that, if you want to pull it in, talk about it. But I just had a question.
It's the last one, Chip, at the bottom.
We'll answer the question.
Okay, that loading zone, the applicant has advised us that they're no longer doing business at that location, so they've requested that zone be removed.
Okay.
And that's in front of the Rutledge?
That is correct.
And the Rutledge, is that the one you're talking about that is not doing business?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. All right. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the items be removed from the consent agenda. The rules on the public hearing keep comments to 3 minutes or less. Each person representing will be expected to offer new information that has not been made previously. Once the public hearing has been closed, no additional comments will be heard unless a public hearing is officially reopened. All right, items on the consent agenda. Resolution number 06-15 be number 2. The first one has been pulled. Proposal number 2015M012 AB001. A request to abandon a right-of-way from Blakemore Avenue to alley number 647 and a portion of Blakemore Avenue from alley 922 eastward, utilities and easements to be abandoned on properties located at 1610 21st Avenue South and 2014 Blakemore Avenue, requested by Little John Engineering, applicant, First American Bank of Nashville owner. Proposal number 2015M013AB001, a request to abandon an unimproved portion of 58th Avenue North and California Avenue right-of-way, easements and utilities to be retained on properties located at 5701 and 5901 California Avenue, unnumbered, requested by Snyder Engineering, PLLC, applicant, Craighead Development, LLC, and Skylight Land, LP owners. On these, we will need a...
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I might have miscommunicated. I needed to pull the first item under number 4. And so item number 1 is still active. I need that to to be presented.
Okay, item,
First bullet under item 4, authorize always stop on South 14th Street at Shelby. I'd like to discuss that item. Therefore, we need to go back and read proposal number 2015M 11AB001, the very first item.
okay, so instead of pulling that, you want to go back?
Yes, sir.
Go back to that one. Then, do you want on the first bullet under Revolution, do you want to discuss that, or you want to go all the way through them
I
first?
want to discuss that item.
Okay. All right, going back to the consent agenda, proposal number 2015M011AB001. A request to abandon a right-of-way from the intersection of South 5th Street to the property line of map and parcel number 0821501050, easements and utilities to be retained on properties located at 408, 412, 418 Woodland Street, and 417 Russell Street, requested by Southeast Ventures LLC, applicant, various property owners. Now, these first three items, we need to do a hand vote on those, or do you?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Do you want to discuss that one or go and vote on it?
You can go ahead and read the items under Resolution 0615, except for that first bullet,
Okay.
and then we'll knock them all out at once.
All right, that'll be good, be good. All right, Revolution 0615, starting bullet number 2, authorize always stop on Hudson Avenue and Woody Crest Drive, currently a 3-way stop. Authorize always stop on Riverside Road and 11th Street. Authorize always stop on North 15th Street and Stratton Avenue. Authorize truck restrictions on 9th Avenue North from Jefferson Street to Treadco Drive. Authorize truck restrictions on Locklear Street from Rosa L. Parks to 10th Avenue North. Authorize no parking anytime on the south side of Hickory Street from South Galton Pike to Broner Avenue. Remove all parking meters on the east side of 6th Avenue North from Union to Dedrick and 7th Avenue North from Union to Charlotte Avenue, and install signs for trooper parking only. Authorize taxi cab stand on the north side of Korean Veteran Boulevard at 3rd Avenue South. Remove taxi cab stand on 4th Avenue South. Remove loading zone at 410 4th Avenue South. Do you want to vote on all of these at one time, or do you want to discuss that first one, Chip, that first bullet?
That's going to be 2 separate votes, so let's vote on this.
All right, we'll vote on all of these, and then we'll come back to bullet number 1. Do I have a motion? So moved. Have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Got to have a hand vote. Thank you. All right, Chip, bullet number 1, authorize all stop on South 14th Street at Shelby Avenue.
Councilmember Westerholm would like to speak to the commission on this.
Councilman, glad to have you. I didn't recognize you out there a few minutes ago. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the commission, I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Just wanted to provide some thoughts on the proposed always stop at South 14th and Shelby. This is a intersection that we've been looking at for a number of years through different options and trying to figure out what can make this area a bit safer. A couple of years ago, with the help of Public Works, we were able to put in a crosswalk in that area with some signage to identify that as a crosswalk. That was a tremendous help, but there's still a concern that because of the increase in volume, accident history, and the increase in pedestrians, that this is something that has the idea of a 4-way stop has received broad support in the nearby neighborhood associations. I've presented this to the Shelby Hills and to the Lachlan Springs neighborhood associations, and there was an outpouring of support for this from both of those groups. I would ask for your approval of this, but also wanted to ask Public Works if this is approved by the Traffic and Parking Commission, to also look at whether it'd be appropriate to put signage in place as you approach, because it is a new stop sign and because there are some sight distance issues related to on-street parking, to make sure that it is visible and it is something that's recognized by drivers. And so I would just ask Public Works to take a look and see whether it'd be appropriate to place something overhead as well. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that any members of the commission may have, and would ask for your favorable consideration of this item.
Thank you, Councilman.
Chairman, I'd just like to make a quick comment, although my speaker's not working, that's okay. I just want to thank Councilman Westerholm for coming here today and all the behind-the-scenes work that he's done on this. It's been a difficult, I think, decision because of the grade, but knowing the amount of traffic and pedestrians in this area, just want to thank you again for all your hard work. Chairman?
Anyone else, commissioners, have any questions? Chip, anything you want to say about it?
No, we're in favor of the always stop. He did have some background info for the commissioners, though.
Okay. All right, this will be a hand. Yes, sir, Councilman.
I'd like to ask Chip, is this on?
Some of them are working, some of them
Yeah,
aren't.
I'd like to ask Chip, is this new information that he gave us something that you already knew about as far as the possible signage to warn that the new stop would be up there?
It's new as of about 20 minutes ago. He's concerned about the visibility of the signage itself if it were to get approved. And we were looking at an overhead sign anyway, and of course the stop ahead signs that we always use. But we've got to figure out, like you said, there's on-street parking, and we don't want to put those signs in a place where they're not seen or be in a position where we don't want to be in. But we're going to look at putting the stop sign itself overhead, maybe the word stop on the asphalt and that sort of thing. But the information he provided, this is basically, I know you mentioned the pedestrians and the crosswalks and all that. Really, there's a sight distance issue out there that he didn't mention, but that's what we're really trying to address.
Okay, we will take a look at that then. Yeah, all right.
Okay.
I move we approve, Mr. Chairman.
Have a first,
Second.
second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. The last bullet, Brenda, did you get satisfied with your answer? Okay, thank you. New business. Authorize no parking any time on both sides of Estes Road from One Circle to Crescent Road. I think you had some remarks on this, didn't you, Chip?
Yes, sir. This was deferred, I believe, last month, maybe a month before. And Commissioner Green wanted to defer this, wanted some more information. And we've talked to him since the last meeting, and he's okay with proceeding. But I wanted to clean up the language that you see before you. What we're really looking at, Corby, can you pull this up on Google? Woodmont at Estes. Well, that'll be fine. Right, that's fine. No, I need an actual. What we need is no parking on Estes on the west side only. He was concerned about the park. Remember the park we were talking about last month? Mm-hmm. People want to go to the park, so we don't want to take vehicle parking off on that side of the road. So what I'm proposing is to remove the parking on the west side only in front of the park, which is the side opposite of the park. And then when it narrows down past the park, prohibit parking on both sides of the road. And I'll show you that on an aerial here in a second. But that's what his concern was of the park, not having any parking but to get over there.
Because, Chip, there's a small parking lot now inside the park, correct?
Correct.
And then you're talking about some pull-in.
That's it right there, Colby.
off
Yeah, that's the
street.
parking lot you're talking about there, by the tennis court. So what we're proposing is, see on your left, on the west side, put no parking signs, allow parking on the right by the park, in that bay right there, and then where it narrows down where that construction equipment is, that's where we would put the no parking signs, on both sides, because it's too narrow to park on the street. So it's not really no parking on both sides of the road as it's written here, because we need to be able to park in front of the park.
raised at the last meeting that we needed a more nuanced solution here. So I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Have a first, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Approved. New business. Request to provide complimentary parking in the Metro Courthouse garage for the 2015 Music City 4th of July concert. 50 spaces for Tuesday, June the 30th, 2015, 7 a.m. arrival and departure in the evening. 50 spaces for Wednesday, July the 1st, 2015, 7 a.m. arrival and departure in the evening. 50 spaces for Thursday, July the 2nd, 2015, 7 a.m. arrival and departure in the evening. 100 spaces for Friday, July the 3rd, 2015, 7 a.m. arrival and departure in the evening. 250 spaces for Saturday, July the 4th, 2015. A few may park early in the day, but the majority will arrive the 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. time frame. I would expect the majority to exit the garage in the 10:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. time frame following the conclusion of the event, with the remainder departing 2 a.m. 50 spaces for Sunday, July the 5th, 2015, 7 a.m. arrival and departure in the evening. Anyone have any questions?
Yes, I have a question for staff. I was just curious about how much do the parking spaces go for? Are these the $10 event parking? Are they the lower rate during this event?
Based on the date of the week, there's a lower rate, but on July 4th, there's a higher rate parking.
They are the higher rate?
Yes, and according to the contract with the Nashville Downtown Partnership, any request for complimentary parking must be approved by the commission. And these people that are parking at the garage are workers and volunteers for the event.
Okay, and I know normally we do approve these, but I was curious if in the future perhaps there's an opportunity to work with MTA, if there was a bus option, so if someone could, say, take a bus pass and ride down, then, for instance, the 250 spaces, I mean, any of those, that's, $10 extra. So, it would be interesting to see, because I know that usually the garage fills up. And if we could encourage more people perhaps to take the public transportation.
We will look into that in the future.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, I know we typically approve these, so with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Have a first and a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed? None. Number 2, cars to go. I believe Chip doesn't Mr. Bob Murphy, does he want to speak on? That's the next one. All right, we have a gentleman here that wants to speak on cars to go, or a lady.
Chairman, let's introduce Council Lady Berkeley Allen.
Where's Council Lady? Oh, all right. Thank you, Council Lady. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you all for the opportunity. I'm Berkeley Allen from District 18, and I saw Car2Go when I was at the National League of Cities in Seattle and then again in Austin. And in Austin, I got to play with them and thought this is really something neat that Nashville needs to do. It is point-to-point car sharing, similar to WeCar and Zipcar, which we're familiar with, where there's a car parked on the street in a designated parking spot, and you can join as a member and then use that car as a rental by the hour or the minute or whatever to get to wherever you need to go, which means you don't necessarily have to own your own car, or you can take the bus or walk downtown and have some flexibility in the middle of the day. So it's part of our multimodal solution. This particular model is a free floating, so that there would be some 200 cars, and Mr. de Bonville can give more details about that. That would be spread over the kind of the inner core of the city, and members who join can then locate a car on their smartphone, and if they have gotten somewhere by other means and need a car in the middle of the day, they can locate a car, check it out with their smartphone, drive it for 3 minutes across town, and check it back in, and they're done. And it cost them, what, $14
41 cents a
41
minute
cents a
and
minute.
$14.99 an hour that you use the vehicle.
Right. So it gives people a lot more flexibility in terms of not being dependent on their own cars. So I think it's an important part of Nashville's becoming less car dependent. If a whole lot of people are sharing that one car, it reduces traffic and parking needs. This has come before you once, and y'all passed it unanimously, I believe. It's coming back around because we wanted to deal more specifically with the residential permit parking issue. In this model, there's a contract that Metro is paid by this company for all the time that's spent at Metro parking meters so that the cars can be anywhere until someone needs them to drive somewhere else. And it was decided that that needed to specifically address areas that might have residential parking now or in the future so that they could also be in those areas. And at my request, we have added language to specifically say that there would be an 800 number on the car so that if there's a resident and this particular car is in a spot that's a problem for them, there's a number where they can call and have that car moved, because I know that's an issue that's important. People take that very seriously when they've gotten that. So I believe that we've dealt with concerns that might come up with that. And with that, I think we've covered all the particularities of making this work really well for the inner core of Nashville, and I would ask for your support.
Can you catch the commissioners up on where you are with your legislation?
Yes, we have introduced the legislation, and at this point, it's on second hearing tomorrow night. So we would love to have your approval before we go into that second hearing. And then with that, I would pass the mic to Mike, so you can answer any other things that I've left out.
Sure. Thank you guys for having me here to talk about Car2Go. I want to thank Councilmember Allen and Davis for sponsoring the legislation. The past 8 months, we've been working together in order to allow us to operate in the city of Nashville. The legislation allows Car2Go to operate in what we have found in rapidly growing dense urban areas, that parking stresses and transportation issues are very real problems that cities have to face and tackle head on. Our mobility solution is an innovative mobility solution where members of the service can pick up and drop the car off where there's any legal on-street parking space within a designated home area, as mentioned before. We have found that our members have shed their vehicles. They drive their vehicle miles traveled are less. It increases, they are more susceptible to use public transit and other modes of transportation, and is a membership-based service where right now we have an 84-to-1 member-to-car ratio where people are sharing a fleet of vehicles. Specifically on the legislation, it basically to allow us to operate is the main points of to allow us to operate are access to meters without having to feed the meters, where we pay the agreement behind the scenes for our members, and access residential permit parking, which we also pay for, and allows our members to park in front of their house, as well as the relaxation of the 2-hour time limits at the meter since it's a 24-hour day service. If you guys have any questions.
I'll throw out one more thing, which is there are reciprocating, I mean, when you join, you're a member everywhere. So a member from Austin or Seattle or the many other cities where this has, when they're in Nashville, they would also be using it, correct?
Absolutely. Once you become a member in one city, you're a member in all of our cities, and hopefully by the end of the year, also our 14 locations over in Europe.
Okay.
So it's great for our visitors as well.
So you have to be a member.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many different locations are you going to have in Nashville?
So-
Are they all going to be, you got to go to that certain area?
So what we start small and then kind of move up based on member demand. What we would be looking to start with in Nashville is about a 25 square mile area, meaning you can park the car anywhere within inside that 25 square miles. At any given time, we can open up satellites where people, we can open up maybe the Opry or whatever, a mall, and people could park there as well. So we start small and then move up based on demand and what our members like, as well as the city.
But how would I know where to go and get this car?
Sure. So we'd be looking to start with about 200 cars in the city of Nashville, and they're spread all throughout the city. In order to find the car, you can look online or the app, or you can just see them on the side of the road. We also have a 1-800 number on the back of the vehicle. You can call in, and they can locate the nearest vehicle to you, and you can go up and get that car. Okay. So the point of the amount of vehicles spread throughout the city is to have a car within a 5 to 10 minute walking distance at any given time at any point of the day.
Okay.
You mentioned that if a car was brought back to a meter, parking meter, that you reimburse the city for the time frame that that car is parked at that meter.
Yes, ma'am.
What if someone takes it to a private parking garage or lot? How is that handled?
We do not initially, we're not intending to get any private parking garages or spots. It doesn't really work. Underground parking garages don't really work that well for our technology, as far as it can be bouncy, and to be frank, garages can be a little intimidating for some people, and we don't want our members to not feel safe. So you are not allowed to park in any private parking. The intent is to have you park on any metered spot or free right-of-way, like right in front of your house. So we would come up with an agreement, basically an estimate at the beginning of the year of how long we expected the cars to sit at the meters. We pay that, and then if we were there longer, we would pay the city the rest of the money. But as far as parking, if we were to have our car towed from a parking lot, that's something that we would teach the member about beforehand, and then after after they had gotten the car towed, we would tell them that they were not allowed to park there. But there's parking rules that we go over with each member.
Mike, I forget what your contract requires as far as reporting back to us. Is it every month you report a good little status report of what's going on?
Yes, sir. I think it's quarterly. We will have monthly parking reports, just giving the status on where we're sitting as far as like the meter agreement for the city to expect whether how much that we're going to owe them at the end of the year potentially. I believe it's every quarter that we will be sharing data based on member usage, utilization, our vehicles. There's a plethora. It's in the legislation. I don't know exactly what it is for Nashville right now, but we'll be sharing member use data quarterly.
Will you be able to come back here on that periodic basis to update the commission on how things look?
Absolutely. So we will be hiring 15 to 20 full and part-time employees in the city of Nashville, and we will be getting office space in the city of Nashville. So we will have a full operation where if I were not able to make it, we will have a general manager here who will be here every single time, and absolutely.
So what we're talking about is a recommendation to council about this piece of legislation. So all you'd be voting on today, John, if you want to help out, but there's legislation written by Council Berkeley Allen.
It was a group effort.
Well, okay. It was a group effort that allows cars to go to park their vehicles on public streets for a car sharing program. And in that agreement, they would reimburse Metro if Metro would lose any money because somebody parked at a meter. So this panel will be voting to make a recommendation to council on that piece of legislation.
That's right on the money, Chip. And basically, this commission has the opportunity to give a recommendation one way or the other. If you choose to recommend this ordinance for passage at council, then it would require a mere majority vote once it gets to council, 21 votes. If for whatever reason the commission saw fit to disapprove or not recommend this piece of legislation, then it would still require a 2/3 vote at council, 27 votes. And of course, that's the case with all the ordinances that come before you. It's not unique in that regard.
I just have a quick.
Isn't there a term on the contract? Is it a one-year term with annual renewals through this commission or the council?
So yes, I think the initial term pilot program is for 1 year, and then each year we will basically after this, if we were to get approved, we will have an agreement, and I think it's with the Public Works where we'll have additional terms kind of in the weeds, and we'd go through that each year, or we could extend it for multiple terms.
I have a question.
But the initial period is 1 year.
So you all on the front end will pay for the estimated time that you will use at the meters.
That's correct.
Okay, and then how are we, is it staff, our parking attendants, are they the ones that are going to keep track of, okay, this is a car-to-go car and it's been here for this amount of time? Like, how are we, what's the auditing process of the time that needs to be paid over that if it's been sitting there longer than what was initially paid?
Sure. So we will basically, we will share our parking reports with you, and we also are saying under oath that these parking reports are true and valid. If they were not to be true and valid by any sort of audit to our capability, you guys would have the ability to end the program.
So their system has
GPS
in it, so they know where their cars are at any time of the day. And so what they'll do is locate all the metered spots, and if that car is in that if the satellite shows them in that spot for a length of time, then that'll be credited to this account.
Exactly, yep. So every minute, it's nothing that, we don't have like 30-minute terms or whatnot. We pay for every single minute we're at the meter.
Is this going to take up a lot of public use parking?
Well, we got 2,000 metered parking spaces. How many roughly do we have empty at any time, do you know?
80%.
Empty?
Oh, empty 20.
So 400 spaces empty at any one time. But it also, if you're in one of these cars, then you're hopefully reducing cars on the road. And so it's a good program. We'd like to see it work. Obviously, we have to manage it and make sure it does work. But I don't think it's going to hurt people looking. I mean, people who aren't in that cars to go find a spot.
Okay. But
Most of them will end up at non-metered on residential even parking. They'll take it to their house, whatever, use it to go get groceries or something. That's the way I'm picturing it. I don't think they'll want to sit at a meter all day in this cars to go vehicle.
So there's no real benefit for the member not to park. I mean, the member can park wherever they want. It doesn't matter if they park in a meter because they're not really paying for it. We're paying for it. But the whole idea of car sharing is that it does take cars off the road, and we will have member surveys 6 months and annually and going forward, and our members will sell their vehicles. So it does take cars off the road in that aspect. And when you're talking about the downtown core, at no point in time will there ever be all of our cars downtown. It's just we would not be operating efficiently in order to do that. They will be spread out throughout the initial 25 square mile area.
okay. Mark would say at the end of 1 year, and we don't think this is working, is Metro obligated to renew that contract?
It's my understanding that we could terminate the contract after 1 year, and I would imagine if it's not working, they'll be happy to terminate it.
All right. Mary?
Yeah, I believe within 60 days is when it might be 30 or 60 days that you're able to assess whether you want to come up with a new agreement or terminate the contract.
This won't be the last time you hear from these people, because we'll have to, it's a relatively new concept, especially in Middle Tennessee, so we're going to have them come back periodically and update you on how it's doing, and, we'll probably have milestones of if we know are we meeting the objectives or not, and things like that.
Yeah, okay. Mary, do you have?
I just want to say, I'm excited about the program coming to Nashville, and I would make a motion to lend our support to the bill.
Have a first, a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Council Lady, for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Chip, would you like to introduce our next speaker?
Yeah, under other business, unlabeled on the agenda, we wanted to talk about the situation on Lower Broad, about how we're addressing some pedestrian concerns. And so I asked Bob and Amy to take a look at the situation and give us a brief presentation on what we're proposing over the next few months. So go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Chip. I'm Bob Murphy with RPM Transportation Consultants, and I'm here today, as Chip mentioned, on behalf of Public Works, to present to you a pilot project that will be undertaken by Public Works to improve the pedestrian safety and better accommodate the demands on Lower Broadway. And I'm specifically talking about Broadway from 1st Avenue to 5th Avenue. So over the past several months, RPM and Public Works have been evaluating options for better accommodating the increasing pedestrian demand, reducing conflicts, and improving pedestrian safety on Lower Broad. We all know how active Lower Broad has become, and I'm sure you also are aware of how much the pedestrian activity down there has increased over the last several years. And this has been at the same time that other activities have increased, activities such as pedal taverns, pedicabs, carriages, taxi use, Uber, etc. So there's a lot going on down on Lower Broadway. Broadway, and we've seen great increases in these various uses trying to utilize this section of Broadway. So based on our counts and studies that we've conducted, we believe it's time to make some changes in how Broadway is being used, and I'm going to present our recommendations shortly. I think it's worth noting that over the last year or so, Public Works has made some improvements to the pedestrian realm in this section of Broadway. The large concrete planter boxes were removed from the intersection corners to give more space to pedestrians. And also recently, Public Works has added an all-pedestrian signal phase to the traffic signals downtown. So this pedestrian phase enables all the pedestrians at an intersection to cross the street at one time, whereas during that time, all the vehicles at the intersection are stopped. So that's used primarily to increase safety for pedestrians. First, some important background information. Lower Broadway is currently characterized, previous slide, yeah, there we go. It's currently characterized by limited pedestrian space that is further constricted by sandwich boards and statues of Elvis and all kinds of other things like that. It has high pedestrian volumes and also long crossing distances for those pedestrians who are crossing Broadway. And due to the number of pedestrian crashes that have happened, Lower Broadway has been classified as a high pedestrian crash zone. There have been 27 pedestrian crashes in the last 5 years between First Avenue and Fifth Avenue. Meanwhile, the traffic volumes on this segment of Broadway, we're talking about the cars, trucks, et cetera, those volumes are relatively low, only about 15,000 vehicles per day, while we have 6 lanes to carry that amount of traffic. And just for comparison purposes, Broadway near the I-40, I-65 interchange carries about 40,000 cars per day. So the point there is that we've got a lot of lanes down on Lower Broad in order to carry not so much traffic in comparison to other segments of that roadway. Now, as shown on this slide, Broadway currently has a right-of-way of 106 feet, and the curb-to-curb width is about 80 feet. And as you can see, the effective sidewalk space ranges from about 8 feet to 9 feet, which means that only about 16% of the total right-of-way is dedicated to pedestrians. Next slide. Now, meanwhile, the traffic and pedestrian counts that we recently completed show that traffic volumes and pedestrian volumes are pretty similar over a 24-hour period on Lower Broad. For example, at the intersection of Broadway and Fifth Avenue, which is what this graph shows, on a Wednesday, we counted a total traffic volume of about 21,000 cars and a pedestrian crossing volume of about 16,000. So pretty similar numbers. We also conducted counts of all types of vehicles, trucks, automobiles, carriages, pedicabs, taxis, et cetera. So we had a good understanding of all the different types of activity that was going on. And I think another point I would make on this slide as you look at it is during part of the day, the pedestrian volumes are actually higher than the traffic volumes. And this is especially true after about 5:30 in the afternoon, kind of the right end of that graph, where the pedestrian volumes become higher than the traffic volumes, and they stay that way until about 10 o'clock p.m. And still from 10 to 11, as shown on this graph, we have almost 1,000 pedestrians crossing at just this one intersection on Fifth and Broad. And this is on a weekday, so some very significant pedestrian volumes. Next slide. As part of our study, we spent a lot of time observing pedestrian and vehicular traffic on Broadway, and here's a video clip that shows the pedestrian and vehicular activity on Broadway. And I'd bring your attention to just how crowded the sidewalks are, but also notice how this outside lane, which is supposed to be a travel lane, is really almost totally utilized by loading activities, taxis, Uber, some people just dropping other people off. And also notice how, I mean, the sidewalk is relatively narrow, but there's also a lot of people who are congregating on the sidewalk. So there's a need for additional space. And then, as we'll see also, there will be pedestrians who are crossing mid-block in between all these cars. We'll also can see that at times when pedestrian, like this is probably about, I think, 6, 7 o'clock at night. And a little bit later, pedestrians, like here, it becomes so busy that pedestrians actually just walk in the street. So there's a clear need for additional space for pedestrians, and also to better organize the loading activities. One of the things I would also point out is from our observations and things that we've heard is that the on-street parking is oftentimes used by people who work downtown, particularly wait staff, who come and park right before the parking restrictions end and stay parked there all night. So even though you would expect some parking turnover for these parking spaces, really there's typically not that much turnover at all. Here you see pedestrians just walking across the middle of the street. Okay, next slide. So based on the studies and observations that have been conducted, Public Works is planning to implement a pilot project for this section of Lower Broadway. And this project has the following goals. First of all, expand and enhance the area available for pedestrians, eliminate the on-street parking, and then create a universal loading zone, one that can be available for freight loading and unloading, musicians, carriages, taxis, valets, and other users who need that area to load and unload. And when I say this is going to be a pilot project, I'm talking about it being a test project. So what we're going to be doing is conducting additional counts and observations during the next 2 to 3 months after it's implemented to try to evaluate how well the plan is working. So on Lower Broad, there's a lot of users who want to use the same space. And so an important question is, how can we allocate the right-of-way for everyone who either wants to be down there or has to be down there? And we believe that the best solution to this includes expanding the pedestrian space by dedicating the existing lane that's closest to the curb to pedestrian traffic. Now, this is the lane that is currently used for on-street parking. And then also using the outside lane, the one that's currently next to the on-street parking, as a universal loading zone. And then maintaining 4 travel lanes on Broadway. So in summarizing the recommendations, the plan is to remove the on-street parking, maintain 4 lanes for traffic, 2 in each direction, expand the pedestrian zone by using the current parking lane, designate what will be the outside lane as the universal loading zone, and then for safety purposes, provide a barrier between the expanded pedestrian space and the universal loading zone by installing temporary movable fencing. And then potentially painting the curb yellow to make the curbs more visible to pedestrians as they're walking. This next slide shows a cross-sectional view of the proposed plan. And as you can see, by doing this, we will practically double the space that is available for pedestrians by reallocating the current parking lane for pedestrian use. And the movable fence is shown there between the new pedestrian space and this proposed universal loading zone. We'll have an 11-foot lane for loading. That'll be plenty wide for trucks and vehicles as well as doors opening. And we will maintain 4 lanes for traffic. These 4 lanes will be more than adequate to accommodate the traffic volumes on this section of Broadway. And I think it's important to note that this plan is not really that much different from how this section of Broadway actually operates now. Because there's so much double parking that takes place, like you saw in the video, it really functions now as if it had only 2 lanes of travel in each direction. And as you saw in the video, pedestrians already spill out into the street, so now they'll have room where they can be more safely accommodated. Next slide shows another view of the plan, and this is just a section. This is Lower Broad between 3rd and 4th. And as shown here, there'll be some gaps in the temporary fencing, and these will be at alley locations and at certain locations so that the people who are loading or unloading can move in between those spaces. Also, the type of temporary fencing that is being used for the pilot project is illustrated here at the bottom. The benefits of the pilot project are that this will establish a wider, more usable pedestrian zone for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is a step that we believe is necessary to improve pedestrian safety. We'll be establishing a better balance for how the right-of-way down there is allocated among the users and have it more balanced for the pedestrian use. This will eliminate the current confusing loading regulations that cause a lot of problems, and it will provide a more understandable and practical loading zone. We'll maintain adequate capacity for traffic on Broadway by having the 4 lanes of traffic. And there are a number of pedestrian safety benefits, and one is being that this plan will cut down on mid-block pedestrian crossings. And it will also help reduce the problem of pedestrians suddenly emerging from behind parked cars, which is a real safety issue. Finally, our next steps that would be taken after from now are first implement the pilot study. Then we would monitor conditions with additional observations, traffic counts, and traffic analysis. We'll during that time receive public input and evaluate any comments that are received. As I mentioned, we'll collect additional traffic counts and other data during this time period, and then evaluate at the end of the time period, evaluate what is the long-term best solution for Broadway. We feel like this test project is a great way to provide input into that decision, and ultimately will lead to a very successful project and improvement for Broadway. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I have a couple. The first is, well, let me first preface this by saying I'm glad to see this. I think this is a great idea. I've got some questions about the fencing. The first is, how would that work in emergency situations? Like if you had to have an emergency evacuation of any one of those heavily populated bars or clubs right there on Broadway that they just need to get out, having that fence there, that almost serves as like a trap barrier almost. I know it has a small exit point, you said at alleyways, right. But you know, you hope for the best but plan for the worst. And if the worst did happen and there was an incident that people need to rush out of a building, I see that could potentially be a problem.
Right.
So,
okay, that's a good point, and I think, as I mentioned, there will be gaps for alleys, but also at other locations so that people can walk in between when they're loading and unloading. And then also, of course, at intersections, they'll be open. So there's those 2 areas where emergency personnel could get in, and then because it's temporary fencing, they can also lift the fences up and move them out of the way if necessary. So.
Yeah. Let me add real quick, and he's right, they're not going to be anchored down perfectly. And Commander Reinbold, the police department, was on the panel, if you want to call it that signed off on all this. So, yeah, I agree with you. I don't want permanent barriers getting out of the building and getting safety. So if the commander answered those kind of questions with it, he approved his fence type. Now this is just during the pilot. When we get to a permanent solution, It'll be different than this altogether. There'll be bollards or something that we can really get people through quickly if we need to.
Gotcha. Two more questions. I'm done. Second, so I just want to make sure, I don't know if I missed this or not, but is this a 24-hour fence, or is this just during peak hours the fence will be put up and then after peak hours it's down?
The plan is for it to be a 24-hour.
24-hour. And lastly, this is, I guess, more of a comment than anything, I'm all for a pilot program. I think this is absolutely wonderful. In fact, I immediately was thinking of other areas in Nashville that if this is successful, maybe we can do something similar to it, or whatever the permanent solution is, maybe look into it, because we have a lot of the same elements in terms of environment happening over on Broadway down the West End area, where you have winners, losers, and those bars right there, Blue Bar. It's the exact same thing as on Broadway downtown. You have a lot of traffic, you have a lot of foot traffic, and you have people walking on the streets and walking in between cars. And so whatever we come up, whatever this yields, I hope this is something that we can use in some of our other heavy pedestrian traffic and vehicle traffic areas to kind of help remedy that problem. But thank you. I'm very excited about this.
And I'll say we're planning to study it a lot so that we can take the things that we see and learn from that, and not only make Broadway improve Broadway the way it needs to be, but if there's other ideas that come out of this or that we can apply to other places, I'm sure, Public Works will be glad to look at those.
Just a couple of comments. When we look at this, you are exactly right. The 4 lanes could totally carry all of the car traffic there. I think that's a good point there. And it might shrink the feel of the street in some ways by moving the loading zone out. The only negative thing I have, in a little bit to his point, is the bike rack. And even though that's something that's temporary right now, bike rack is such a negative. I mean, we have to deal with it on all kinds of events, and bike rack just looks like a big barrier that you're caging people in. If you try it for a couple of months, and everybody thinks it works, I understand, but I would just really encourage you to leave as much room as possible between the bike racks to just not create such a caged corral feel. The only other concern I might have is a 24/7, 365 kind of situation, because yes, we have a lot of times when it's like this, but unfortunately, we have a lot of times when we don't need the extra space in the street. So then you have all that open space. I think as a whole, the majority of the people are going to go along with you, the merchants. I mean, I can't really talk for everybody, but I think there's a general consensus that we do probably need to do something down there, because there are times when it's really an unsafe situation with people going out in between cars, that sort of thing. I'm not sure this will keep them from doing that, but it might help some. I think another point you could look at is if there was some sort of crosswalk in the center of a couple of those blocks, particularly the 400 block. We've thought about that for many, many years being down there, that it would be good to have a crosswalk. I don't know if that worked or not, but that's something to look at and think about, as a crosswalk in the middle of the block. But the biggest concern I have is the fencing, and if it's temporary, and there's big spaces in it, maybe we can deal with it, but that would be my biggest negative of the entire plan. And there was some talk in the beginning that there would just be some real dominant striping along the edges of where the loading zone was and where the pedestrian part was. So I know you're going to have some pretty significant signage, because
yeah, that's why we're calling it a pilot. We're going to be tweaking this and taking studies and counts and looking at it. This, what you see day one, is not going to be sure. And we end up with. And I know this isn't going to help the cage tiger thing, but we're probably going to put something over these bike racks, to make them more decorative. That may give it more of a cage feeling of it. But
necessarily,
Bike racks down here.
maybe it's a cover with a guitar on it.
Yeah.
There you go, music notes, something like that. But, maybe even you can sell advertising from a merchant, I don't know. But something that makes it not look like a cage.
Yeah.
That's really, really important.
I would agree.
I'd just like to chime in and say I'm in favor of it. With CMA this week, it should happen immediately, correct? And it's just, with so many people downtown, so I think this will be a great thing. I would like to see it, move from the pilot project, and I'm excited that, I don't want to just see the fencing down there for a year or so, and we're still looking at it, 6 months from now, we're still testing it out. You really want to see that permanent solution then. And so I'm excited there's an evaluation part, and that that's the plan is to move forward. And, just to echo, I think with the loading zone is focusing too on the alleys behind and seeing what can be done to use those more for those bands, moving, equipment, things in and out. I think that's a very huge component of this. I realize the taxis will still want to pick up in that loading zone, but if there's ways to utilize the alleys more, I feel like that will benefit Broadway as well.
The alleys in that area are used, the pedestrians use the alley. It's very difficult to get a vehicle down those alleys. And this week during CMA Fest and some other high traffic times, we are utilizing a situation very similar to this with there will be no parking on the street. Those parking spaces will go away during this week, and the sidewalks are expanded temporarily for pedestrians.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, this case has been on our radar screen. We did a mobility study and a pedestrian safety study about a year ago. And unfortunately, Broadway was the number one place where we could expect the biggest conflict between pedestrians and cars. And so we've been focused on this location. We're doing a similar project out at 21st and Broad right now, where we're out there by Vanderbilt, where there's a lot of people walking, and we're doing a lot of improvements to improve pedestrian safety in that location. We also have contracts going through the Metro Council in the next meeting or three of intersection projects all over the city to try to, again, improve the safety for everybody. As a heads up.
So at this point, this isn't an action item. It's not we don't have to have a vote. We don't have to have whatever you call them, recommendations. But we're going to put the pilot in place, and then down the road, 2 months, 3 months, when we make it, if we are fortunate enough to make it permanent, then it'll come before the commission as an action item to remove the meters if that's the case, and make it an official loading zone and that kind of thing that you have to vote on. At this point, it's not an action item, so we can experiment with it and then come back before you to see what we're going to really put in place permanently.
Okay. Bob, how high will this fence be? How high will the fence be?
That's a good question. I don't know the exact dimension. I think it's probably about
42 inches.
42?
Yeah, I was gonna say about 40 feet.
All right. How wide will the gaps be apart? Because it's going to take a pretty good gap to get a tractor-trailer rig in those.
No, he'll be getting his two-wheel cart through there.
Yeah.
His tractor trailer will be on the outside of the fence.
Taking up one of the lanes.
He'll be parked in that lane adjacent to the fence,
Okay.
and then he'll take his cart out and he'll use the gaps in the fence to load from his vehicle.
Okay. How far will those gaps be apart?
They vary. I mean, we have a plan that is proposed, and it really varies a lot depending on where you are and is there an alley or what, or if you're just trying to provide a loading space for a business.
Okay.
There's quite a number of gaps available.
Okay.
Yeah, there are more driveways and alleys down there than you realize until you're doing something like this. There's a lot of gaps just for the alleys. And then the loading gap will probably be 3 feet, maybe. It'll vary, though.
Okay. Commissioners, anyone have any questions? Bob, we appreciate you coming. I think this is a good idea, and look forward to seeing it work. Sergeant?
There's no further business. I move to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second? Thank you. All in favor, say aye. All right. Good meeting.